The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good evening, and welcome to this week's case study with Jim Laval. And I think we're ready to go. So, Jim, you want to take this?
Sure. Um, Already see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it. And by the way, this is being recorded. Also,
Right.
for questions, we'll wait till the end, and then you can either type your question or I'll unmute you, and we can ask questions at the end. So, go ahead.
Yep. So this is a great case. This is actually another executive that's in it's not his real name, but another executive that's in the nutrition business industry that wanted to see the program work. And it was funny because when I went through his report, he was like, man, you told me so much more than I'd get at the typical doctor office. He already signed his wife up immediately as soon as he saw the metabolic report. So just that, I'm telling you guys that because I'm telling you when you give somebody this report, it creates a wow effect and it drives other business right away. And that was interesting for me because it was like, wow, okay, cool. Hey, you're gonna have your wife and your in-laws, and before I know it, I'm gonna have 8 people out of this because I had an organized way of explaining where his metabolism was at instead of just going all over the place with as you go down a lab sheet. So it really made a difference from the business perspective of getting his assessment done quickly, having an impact, and then really getting business immediately from him. So anyway, let's look at his questionnaire. And you can see here he's born in 1975. He didn't give us a blood pressure or heart. You wouldn't have any of the other vitals on him, but he was 68 inches tall, 168 pounds. He's up a little bit of weight. He does, kind of this, big executive, and when he gets under big stress, he doesn't sleep as well. And we'll kind of go through this and see what it shows us. So as you go through this whole first part of the questionnaire, it's all going nose. So when you look at him, you go, okay, let's go down here to adrenal. Do you take more than 3 cups a day of coffee or another caffeinated beverage in order to get energy? And he was a yes. And then he also was complaining that his short-term memory was starting to go. So right away, business executive, midday fatigue, not thinking as sharp as he could. He's a great candidate for RG3, actually, which I just got another executive, talking about RG3 and how it changed their life, to be able to think through the mid-afternoon again. But then let's go on to, again, no other adrenal symptoms. Has a lot of difficulty with losing weight. He's always got that extra 15 pounds he can't seem to get off. Let's keep going. Has he complained about anything else? He feels full for an extended period of time after eating. Well, either he eats a digestive enzyme, or maybe some betaine, or maybe he's not chewing his food, right? No other complaints digestively. He does have a chronic postnasal drip. He does end up sneezing a fair amount. He definitely has trouble with sleep. Look how his brain, you look at, he only sleeps between 5 and 7 hours. He's a restless sleeper. He wakes up to 3 times a night. I remember when I interviewed him that he wakes up to 3 times a night. And then he has difficulty falling and staying asleep. So clearly, this business executive is pushing that first triad really hard. And although he's not in bad health, look, he's 1975. He's, in fact, 15 years younger than me. So, this is a guy that's just 40 years old. But when you fill out his questionnaire and you talk to him, you'd think he's 15 years older than I am. You'd think he was 70, because, oh, yeah, I'm not thinking as sharp. I'm not sleeping well. I'm kind of stressed out. I know, I'm overweight. And I don't seem to get as much exercise as I should. And then as you go through here, he's saying no a lot until we get the sex hormones and off and running. There we go. Reduced urine flow, forced urination, frequency issues are there. So really, this guy, if you're going strictly on the questionnaire, stress is playing out the majority of this. But let's look at his labs. Let's see what happens when we do the report. It'll be popping up in just a second. Here we go. So let's take a look at what's going on. So as we look here, let's take a look. Now, he's not scoring high anywhere. So his labs aren't particularly driving this thing crazy. His gut isn't particularly driving it crazy. If you notice, his highest score is 400. But for him, clearly his interest was to be able to sleep better, think clearer, and get some weight off. So when you think about that, the adrenal causes a lot of problems with brain and memory, right? As all you guys know. But it's the reason that the gut immune brain triad kind of rises up on this, because look how many points he scored on the symptom score for brain, right? And so that's what I think is interesting, is that you clearly can tell that these first two triads are dominating this individual, this 40-year-old international business executive running a multi-million-dollar raw material company, and yet feeling like, I guess I don't have the right raw material for me to take, right? So as we go on, let's take a look. You can see now that he has a lot of just yellow moderate risk, no red risk, a lot of moderate risk. I'm going to shrink this over here. And then actually he's in the green in terms of some of his, this is probably one of the better overall reports that I've seen in terms of he's got risk in green, risk in yellow, hardly any risk in red. So he actually is somebody that's trying to take care of himself, but clearly stress is getting the better of him. So let's take a look at what's going on. So the first thing you see is what? He has a cortisol of almost 21. So he is trending high serum morning cortisol. So, the morning is trending high, his DHEA is dipping, his sodium is starting to dip low. Clearly, his adrenals are in that early stage of he's sympathetic dominant. I wanted him to make sure he does his blood pressures and report them to us because this is an executive. It's a nice thing about doing this metabolic code report. I'm an executive in New York, and I can do a nutrition evaluation on him. He's gonna do his pH. He's gonna do his blood pressure. He'll report it back to us because I suspected that he would be a candidate for his blood pressure to be starting to climb a little due to the fact that his cortisol's high and his sodium is starting to trend low. So he's in that sustained fight or flight response. If we look at his thyroid hormones, let's face it, guys. We could pick on these. His free T3 is good. His total T3 could be better. It's kind of trending low. His free T4 is good, and his total T4 is okay. But what we see right now is that he's really still holding in there with his thyroid hormones. This wouldn't be something that you'd have to go to right away, right? It's pretty good. Now, let's go to the next one, his blood sugar. So if you look at this, his fasting sugar is actually hypoglycemic almost. And he reported that. He can't go too long without eating or he starts getting irritable, grouchy, and starting to get dizzy and shaky. And his hemoglobin A1C is high, so what's that telling you? He's making too much insulin postprandial, so he's glycating and his blood sugars dip too fast. And so this is a great example of someone who is probably, if the stress levels go high, that fasting blood sugar is going to start to climb, and he's going to be a great candidate to become a fully insulin-resistant person, which will lead him, obviously, to things like diabetes and other inflammatory disorders, as well as hypertension. He's not really a Med-S guy because of his BMI and his weight and his height, but he is on his way to kind of the pre-hypertensive, pre-diabetic risk, and you can see it clearly based on the labs. His trigs are low, but he doesn't need a lot of sugar, so he's kind of good there. If you look here, his percent monocytes are kind of, they're just on the borderline of trending high. His C-reactive protein is high, 2.9. It really should be under 1, right? But at least it's, trending high. And then if you look, his vitamin D is trending low as well. Obviously we want him between 50 and 80. Some people, everybody's got their idea what's ideal on this thing, but we know for sure that 28 is too low. And so we're getting a picture here that some of his immune parameters are kind of weak. He's got a little bit of chronic inflammation with the CRP. He's got a little bit with the low vitamin D. His monocytes are, honestly, they're good enough. We're not going to, bang on them too much. And then his globulin's trending a little low. His basophils are trending a little bit high. But really, these are not big parameters. Look at his homocysteine, though. Folate's through the roof, and his homocysteine is trending high. He takes regular folic acid. He doesn't take methylfolate, nor does he take any other methylating B factors, or for example, even aged garlic, which targets homocysteine beautifully. So Kyolic aged garlic is beautiful at lowering homocysteine, and so both of those are at peak. And of course, elevated homocysteine is going to be throwing points into the cardio and the kidneys at the same time it is listed in the brain. So just so you guys know. And then let's take a look at where he's at with his lipids. His LDL slightly elevated, his total cholesterol slightly elevated, but you know what? We're not going to bang on that too hard, right? Because these numbers aren't that far off. But the next blood test he does, he wants to do a lipid particle number. And that'll probably show, some pretty big issues, unless what we do with him intervenes and takes care of it. But we're going to measure that his next time out. We didn't have his blood pressures here, so that was unfortunate. And then if you take a look here, his iron is trending high. His MCVs are trending high. His red cell width is actually okay. So he's got a little bit of that B vitamin issues going on here. His iron's a little bit saturated. His hemoglobin isn't all that bad though. So I mean, there's really not a lot here that's alarming us, right? It's just they're out of balance a little bit. And if you get his metabolism right, look, just correcting cortisol will alter blood counts, and altering pH will alter blood counts. So I mean, because you start retaining minerals and enzyme functions start to occur correctly. So yeah, this is, although he has a lot of yellows in here, nothing too alarming. Although when you look at the platelets there at 157, that's probably the big one, and I'd say you keep your eye on that. Probably going to shift a little low. If it's any lower, there could be some toxicity there. But for his original reading, a lot of this with B vitamins, and it would be corrective. And then let's take a look here at his kidneys. Kidney point's pretty good, other than his uric acid's trending high. Uric acid's trending high. He's probably got an acidic pH, probably low in magnesium because of his hemoglobin A1C and his dysglycemia. So it kind of, you kind of could tell that all these factors are kind of resonating together, kind of starting to see this shift in him. So he might last a year, it might take 5 years, but he can end up with, clearly a cardiometabolic risk or a MET-S kind of event where all of a sudden he's gaining 25 pounds and he can't figure out why. Now let's look at his sex hormones. And his testosterone for a guy that's 40 years old, I mean, it's not bad, but his free testosterone is kind of low. His total should be a little better, really. I mean, you would think that this total would be up around 575 in his age group, but because his cortisol is high, we know that the cortisol testosterone ratio shifts. So our target should be is use something that's going to improve his testosterone and lower his cortisol, and maybe even because he's under stress, give him something else for his cortisol. And so that's the when you look at this, you can start to see it. He doesn't particularly have any problems with his estrogens, but you can tell that he's starting to lose testosterone production because of his because of his cortisol spike. So that's kind of him. So what symptoms were big for the brain symptoms, right? Look, all that sleep stuff is where he scored highest. He had a runny nose, so his gut's probably a little off. He didn't have a lot of other complaints related to, being a real bad GI case. So he was full for an extended period of time, not necessarily gassy and bloated. So maybe the thought is that he gets digestive enzymes to start out when you put him on a modified low carb diet. The diet for him, the metabolic code diet, is ideal for him because it's a modified low carb diet. It'll help to keep the insulin resistance down, keep the blood sugars regulated, and give him the energy he needs, right? So, a little bit of like maybe some MCT oils or coconut oil or ghee is going to be really beneficial for him. And so by far, if you look at the amount of symptoms he's experiencing, the testosterone symptoms were really because, his prostate. But the symptoms all are dominated in the first two triads. So of course you'd want to work there. And then, once again, we can review these, but as you can see for triad 1, hemoglobin A1C is up, sodium down, testosterone down, D down, homocysteine up, which is a byproduct, obviously, of blood sugar and cortisol and thyroid metabolism issues. We'll throw some stressor points into here. T3 total down, cortisol's high, CRP's high, uric acid's high, all that stuff. Uric acid, LDL, CRP are associated with insulin resistance. So we're just pulling white blood cell counts altered. We're just pulling all that information here to say, what? All these labs are correlating to this triad. And then you go to gut, immune, brain, and you see the same thing, right? But not as many labs, more symptoms, right, on triad 2. So that's why the scoring came out the way it did. And then obviously triad 3, a little bit of elevation in cholesterol, a little bit of elevation in LDL. T3 being down obviously sends points into the cardio side of this triad, as well as the homocysteine having an effect on the neurovascular aspect of this triad. And then with triad 4, we see, the homocysteine being off, the white blood cell count being off, platelets off, that we're not getting replenishment of red blood cells quite as good as we could. And of course, his testosterone is down a little bit, so that reports in that triad. So going through, obviously, he has his report, and I gave one of these reports out today. We'll do this woman next week because she is that ideal person, 61 years old, has been very fit her whole life, hit menopause, hormones sent her through a loop. She didn't gain any weight, but she, it's the feeling of being unwell, and now her bladder's leaking, and she's wanting to optimize her health because she's always been able to kind of take care of herself, but then kind of be very social and be able to drink and party and have fun. But now that she's 61, those wheels are coming off the cart. That's going to be our case next week. I mean, and this is a beautiful one because we gave her report today, and she was just blown away by all the information that it gave her. So let's just get through this and get to recommendations. So this is a pretty interesting recommendation. You could either think of Adricet is obviously the adaptogen for the adrenals, and then still point is to get the cortisol down. So you're working on balancing adrenal function, getting the cortisol down. Now you could just choose to use still point, and that's it. Hold on one second. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me, folks. But this really does hit it quite well, because if you look at this, if you just focused on the brown and the blue, right? Something for sleep, get the adequate magnesium status in, get the vitamin D up, work on the adrenals, and give a the Wellness Essentials Healthy Balance, it's a multivitamin. It's focused on blood sugar. So it's got extra chromium in it, and it's got extra B vitamins in it. So that really ends up fitting the getting the homocysteine down. Now, if it, his lipids weren't all that off, but if he came back and his blood pressure was slightly elevated, his lipid particle number was slightly off, you would think that would pull up automatically, like aged garlic extract would be perfect. But it's really, we don't have enough info to really make that the primary driver, right? If he changes his diet, gets less kind of dysglycemic, so he's not spiking his blood sugar post-meal, and he gets his stress hormones under control and sleeps, he's probably going to overcome those lipid anomalies that he has going on. And in terms of his prostate health, probably a simple recommendation of, hey, if you're not on saw palmetto, but he was on saw palmetto already, actually, that would be the simple recommendation. I think getting his sympathetic nervous system to calm down actually could have some big impact on his prostate, just like getting his vitamin D status up could. And you could choose to do more vitamin D, obviously, on some of my prostate folks. I'll do 30,000 units a day for 10 days and then drop down. But as a general recommendation, this report actually pretty much nailed what the guy needed to do, which was get your blood sugar under control, get your adrenals under control with an adaptogen and something for stress response, get yourself to sleep at night, get your vitamin D and magnesium status back. And honestly, we continue to get this refining of this report as we run more and more of these. This was almost a perfect rendition for his complaints, and and really that's that's our case. I mean, I think it's a good case. And what would you think of on him? Because of his platelet that picked up, think about POPs or heavy metals, checking for environmental toxins, do the metabolic code diet, cognitive impairment. You could add, Cereva from Meta. You could add RG3 nasal spray for him because he would get an immediate pop off of that. So these are things that you can add in addition to this baseline platform. And if you're really looking to change his lipid target, I would not be giving him anything for lipids right now. I would give him 90 days, get his diet changed, manage his cortisol, because we know that cortisol definitely impacts lipid particle size and LDL production. So, we go there and, we start there and look, if, as we well know, with the sinuses, a lot of times that's gut. That might be the next thing to consider doing. It's like in your first visit, we're going to work on getting your stress under control, getting your sleeping, getting your blood sugar better. On your next time you come back, we're going to evaluate based on changing your diet. Is your nose still running? Do we need to go there and work on your gut? But that way you kind of you're getting him started with the things he's going to feel the most. And, for him, it's all about stress, cognitive function, and being able to get a better night's sleep. And and the rest of this is kind of the rest. It's here are the reports that will explain all of it to him. And what type of exercise program does this guy need? Does he need something where he's jacked up? No, he needs to do a moderate heart rate. He's 40 years old. Probably don't get his heart rate up over 125, 130. Do some moderate walking. Don't jack his stress up anymore, but get him getting more physically active, committing to walking, committing to getting his 10,000 steps a day in if you can. And that's a great start, because at one point he's going to need to exercise and move some weight, just to kind of optimize his fat burning potential. So that is our case tonight. Beautiful case, actually, and once again, not horribly complex, but really the type of person that is going to refer a bunch of people in, and they're basically well, but they want to get tuned up. But you also see if he keeps on doing what he's doing, he's the guy that becomes basically sick, and 25 years down the line, basically cognitive issues start to pop up, right? So really looking at the cracks in the dam here with him, you can see where he's going to play out. So that's it. That's the case.
Great, thanks, Jim. So now I'm going to open it up to questions. I believe Dr. Casal was on and he had his hand raised, so I don't know if you still had a question.
Sure.
This is Marta. I'm going to unmute you. And if you want to ask your question, go ahead. Or you can also type it in the question box below. Okay. I think you're still muted. If you want to unmute yourself, I unmuted you. If not, that's fine. We also have John Mallon on the line tonight. John, I don't know if you have any questions. I'm going to unmute you and
This is
see.
a pretty basic, although this was a basic case, it's once again a real world case that came in, wanted the evaluation, and it showed the nuances of what's going on. I mean, a lot of the folks that have been listening to our cases where we've had tougher ones, this one probably looked like a no-brainer by now looking at the triads.
Yep, great. It's a great example. Okay, well, if there are no questions, just FYI, I've recorded the session and it will be online in 24 to 48 hours at metaboliccode.com/blog. And if you have any other questions, you can email us at mgraham@metaboliccode.com or lbricker@metaboliccode.com.
Yeah. And Marta,
Yeah.
the other one is I'm gonna highlight a case next week as well. We're gonna do that one case, but I'm gonna highlight this other case of this ulcerative colitis case that was hospitalized and then came out, and we got him on board with stuff, and he went from a pain level of 10 plus to a pain level of 1 in 3 weeks with the protocol we put together using the metabolic code. So we're
Oh,
going to have a little more complex case next week. I'm going to try and start doing, because I think I can do it in a half hour. I'm going to try and do an easy case and a complex case in our half-hour time allotment,
oh,
just to let people know.
that would be excellent. That would be excellent. So this is next week. We'll have the ulcerative colitis patient. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, great, great. All right. Thank you very much for attending
Great.
tonight.
All right,
And
guys.
we will talk to you next week. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Have a great evening. Bye.